Hello, I'm Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host of the New York Parrot Literary Corner. Welcome today. Today we have Jan Paul, who has 349 published poems. They've appeared in various journals, including APC, Mid-American Review, and Parnassus. Three chapbooks and one full-length poetry collection, I Wanted to Dance with My Father, were published by Finishing Line Press. Orbis England nominated her for the prestigious Pushcart Prize in 2020. Jan was a Franciscan nun from 1960 to 1967 and lived in Australia for 14 years with her Aussie husband and two children. She completed a dissertation at the University of Rochester, Age and Natural Order in Second Language Acquisition, then taught ESL at Rochester Institute of Technology, and then back in Chicago, Loyola, and DePaul universities. Now, when not gardening at their farm, Jan and her husband like to cook for their friends. Welcome to the show, Jan. How are you today?
Hi, good.
It's wonderful to have you. I think we'll have an excellent discussion about your book, I Wanted to Dance with My Father, amongst poetical things. It's interesting title. So I'm curious, what is the meaning of that title? Where did you come up with that, and what does it have to do with the book itself?
Well, like most of my poetry, it comes out of the blue from my head.
Mm-hmm.
It does refer to my childhood and the type of family that I grew up in, which was abusive to a certain degree. However, as you can see, I've got past that.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably really did think that what I wrote in that poem, in the first poem in the book, that I wanted to dance with my father. This might have been an image for I wanted to have a closer relationship with my father than I did. However, ultimately, as in the poem, I end up sitting at a table with my mother and watching my father perform with dancing on the floor.
It's interesting. So it comes from real life experience and sort of a longing. I think a lot of poetry comes from this place of longing. Something is absent, and you sort of want to recreate that. Do you feel that that's what you were doing in the book?
Yes, I think so.
Interesting. So, why did you choose Finishing Line Press as a publisher? Where did you hear about them, and what intrigued you about them to decide for them to publish your book?
I'm not sure about why I chose them. I didn't hear anything good about them at that point. I can speak very positively about them now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time that I was trying to publish the book, oh, wait a minute. It was no. Finishing Line Press had already published a chapbook
Mm-hmm.
of mine. And so when it came to a full length book, I looked to them. So it was just a natural progression to work with them. They're very nice to work with.
Yeah, I've heard quite a lot of good things about them from a lot of their authors, and I've had several friends and people I really respect who have published with Finishing Line. So I think they're very highly of them. And Leah's remarkably intelligent and wonderful person. I've spoken with her a few times, and she's very nice. So, what is the editing process for you? I mean, like selecting poems for the books that when you put together, do you have all these poems prepared individually, or how do you work on your selecting
Yes,
and putting the book together?
yes, that's fairly independent. I had to decide how I wanted to structure, as you alluded, the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to do it. It's autobiographical. And I decided to do it from the very beginning, including poems about my parental family. And then I progressed to entering the convent. This is another quality of my poetry, that I write about my 7 years in the convent, a Catholic convent. And then I moved on to having children, living in Australia. I met a lovely Australian man, and we moved to Australia after he finished his PhD, and first to Brisbane, which is in Queensland, and then Sydney. And then after poems with him, I included in the book, I included poems about my children, primarily focusing on, at that time, on my son's drug addiction and recovery. And he's recovered in a marvelous way and is a very successful businessman in Austin, Texas. And the poems about my daughter primarily concentrate on her triathletic activities. She's a triathlete, and she worked in New York City for a while, for 10 years, and has now moved to Connecticut with her husband. And I included a few poems about my students because I've always been very, very interested in different cultures, and as my dissertation alluded, and so I've included some poems about my students too.
Wonderful. You mentioned being a Franciscan nun for a while. How does that work into your poetry? What did that teach you? That experience teach you that applied to your poetry in some way?
Well, I should qualify that the poems about the convent are only my experience, and other people have lovely experiences and they love it, but I did not, and it did not work. Yeah, it did not work for me. So many of the poems that I've included in I Wanted to Dance with My Father are memories of more negative experiences. Now I think I'm writing a bit more positively about the convent, but some of my ex-nun friends remind me that my experience might have been that way, but theirs wasn't.
Was there any particular event or something that worked its way into your poetry that you could share?
Pardon me?
Is there any kind of event that happened, or there like something that worked its way into your poetry as your experience as a nun that you would like to share?
It just comes up. I actually started writing poetry in high school, and then dropped it for a while when I was doing my undergrad and then graduate school. But then I took a course. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. I'll get there, but
Okay.
be patient with me, please. But I took a course when we were living in Rochester, New York, on autobiographical writing, memoir writing. And what happened is the very, very fine teacher, Michelle, I can't remember her name, assigned a poem. And I wrote a poem which wasn't to do with the convent necessarily, but she asked me if she could submit it for publication, and I was almost floored. But the reason I'm going on and on about that is that that was the first time that I ever thought of writing poetry and submitting it for publication. That was in 1998. And I found, as I was discovering my ability to express my feelings and ideas in poetry, that some of the ideas that started coming into my head originated with the convent and with my family, my parental family. And I just flowed with it. I let it come, and I wrote things in a journal to start with, and then I put something on in my poetry file, and then I'd work on it for several months, and and take it to, right now I'm in the Poets Club of Chicago. It's an honor for me to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And the people there help structure our poems very well.
You know, I'm
So,
thinking of. Go
sorry,
ahead.
so I'm sorry, should I continue?
Yes, please do. Please do.
So when it just happens that an idea will come up. I don't work on it. I don't scrape through my brain like I'm working in the garden, but I'll get a memory of something in the convent, and then I'll write it down and work on it.
There was a joke that Bruce Springsteen said that he was raised strict Catholic, and then as he got older, he tried to ride his way out of it, and he said it just wasn't happening. He just couldn't do it. So I think that's and that's my experience too. Like something about the theology just kind of like it gets beaten over your head, I guess, and it just sticks with you. You just can't let go of it.
Well, I also feed it too. Another way
Yes.
that I feed my poetry writing now is I read extensively. And I tried, even though I don't practice a religion now, and never will again, once burned, twice shy,
Yes.
maybe. But even though, now I forgot what I was going to say, trying to be clever here. I do try to keep reading on theology. And my friends know that, and they'll direct me to books that are interesting. For example, should I continue?
Yes, please.
For example, I just fairly recently I read a book on American tolerance of different religions, and it was our America was not so tolerant of different religions. In fact, what we're very unfair with Baptists and the Mormons. Yeah, so I continue to work. Right now I'm reading a novel. What is it? The 18th wife, the 17th wife, on Mormon multiple marriages. Yeah. So even though I don't practice religion now, I am interested in religion as an institution.
As America, we think of ourselves as very religiously tolerant. It's part of the backbone of our society is the First Amendment, and I think historically that's just not played its way out as much as we would expect.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it definitely because there are a lot of religions that have faced persecution, and even in speaking of Catholics, let's just look at the presidency of JFK, for instance. A lot of people just hated him because he was Catholic. And that seemed to be problematic for a lot of people. And you would think of our country as being the backbone is like a religious, in a way, it's the background of our society and our culture is, the Protestant work ethic. So it's like, it's very strange. It's also not strange, maybe. What do you think of that? Maybe that kind of works its way into some of the bigotry and how it plays out, and the religious intolerance and how it works its way into our society somehow. And
supposedly the United States, again, that same book that talked about religious tolerance, intolerance, supposedly the United States tried to establish a government that was not religious at all.
right.
However, at some point, and I don't remember where this came in the book, but at some point, the United States started to introduce more religious factors into their schooling. We say we're prejudiced against certain religions, but people are prejudiced against non-religions too, against
Right.
atheism and agnosticism.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, I can't recall when the United States, well, for example, the Pledge Allegiance to the flag, that never said
Right.
in God.
Right.
The just as in the what's the song we sing at sporting events? They were never written as religious songs.
Right. And then the
However,
currency
that
as in God We Trust now too as well. I think that was
yes,
during Eisenhower
yes,
administration. Yeah.
yes,
Sort of trying to shift the foundation a little bit. I mean, I totally agree that we were founded on sort of the secular principles of letting people choose their own conscience and their own way of their faith or non-faith in that in some instances. And it seems like it shifted somewhere to be more rigidly religious in a way.
yes.
So how does the concept of faith or even non-faith work its way into your poetry? Do you write about theological subjects, or does it just sort of the theme and the subject matter just work its way into your poetry?
No, nothing theoretical, just more of my experiences, some of the peculiarities that I experienced in the convent. Uh, I have a poem. I wrote a poem talking to my one of my cousins who was in the Navy, and we have compared the way that he was brainwashed in the Navy and the way that I was brainwashed in the convent. And
Hmm.
I think that's what I'm most bitter about is that I had to sneak to read Wuthering Heights. I had to ask permission of my
Hmm.
convent superior, and but she did let me read read it,
Wow.
and but I had to put a paper cover on it, Wuthering Heights, because for some reason that was offensive in
Hmm.
my education. At the same time, I read Rousseau's Emile, which is
Hmm.
the education of a French young man, and that too, I had to put a paper cover on while I read it. They let me read it, but I
Hmm.
had to put a paper cover on it. So,
Rather
so
authoritarian there. It seems like I mean, I guess very much brainwashing. It's trying to level a certain kind of perspective into you and sort of and cultivate an intolerance or a fear of something else,
yes, that's right. I like your word intolerance because I think that's what I was just cutting off part of my life by
Hmm.
being in that situation. And
Right.
I don't want to say it was totally bad. There
Right.
were some positive. The music, of course, was
Hmm.
stunning, and I
Wow.
was in the choir. And later in my life, I was a Sweet Adeline singer. So I think
Hmm.
I got my beginning in the convent, my love of music. Um, there was also the we were taught to meditate, and I mean now meditation is considered a very good way to organize your life. So that
Hmm.
might be another positive feature.
So, would you like to share a poem or two with us?
Would you like me to read one?
Yes, please.
Oh, sure. Well, how about if since you want a convent one, or you want I wanted to
Let's hear
dance with
it.
my father?
Let's hear the convent one. We can hear it. Dance with their father one later, like after you read that one, so we can flow into it.
Sorry, what should I read?
Read one from about the convent, and then you can read another one from the other book.
Okay,
You
I
want to do
didn't
that?
think of anything, but I will. Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? The way that
I'm curious
uh,
because I grew up Catholic. I was heavily indoctrinated in Catholic school. I mean, it was a thing, and it's curious to me how it works behind the scenes in a way. I was, raised very Catholic in a Catholic household, and was put through Catholic schools, and it is quite interesting. It sticks with you.
I don't think Catholic schools are like that. I had a
Not too
massage
bad.
therapist who,
Hmm.
um, I had a massage therapist who said that there were Muslim people. She went to a Catholic school, and I went, ooh, and she said, um, oh no, she said there were Muslims in my class. There were, yeah, so Protestants. So now it's different, but so I don't want to badmouth Catholic education. Heaven knows what I would have done if I hadn't had that discipline I had.
Hmm.
I don't, if you don't mind, I don't like to read long poems when
Okay,
I'm reading. I find my attention wavering. So I will
fine.
read one. I have a shorter convent one, okay?
Okay, sounds
It's
great. I'm looking
called
forward to it.
it's called Vocation, okay?
Hmm.
She comes looking for a Sherpa, wigwam, igloo, anything to enclose her glass conservatory with transparent paneled walls, traditional Japanese paper barriers, or French louvres. So they rolled beige water wallpaper over her, locked her in a closet, dehydrated, deloused, disillusioned, almost decomposed her after she staggered to their wrought iron gates, blinded like St. Paul by the voice she heard on Saturday afternoons praying the Stations of the Cross, follow me. Rattling the reduced interior reserves she thought she had to will the energy to climb stairs, press the doorbell, arrange her hair in the hallway mirror, with while away her parental home for thin cocoon where she will develop wings to fly or be eaten by predatory insects in the convent here. Um, okay, and that was pretty much. I met some people who were very disturbed in the convent,
Right.
and maybe that's just to be expected in any societal group. But you don't expect it in the convent. You expect people to be kind and friendly
Hmm.
and loving, and there were many people who were that way, but there were also very disturbed people. In one convent I was in, one of the women had been in a terrible car accident. So, haha, guess what? She promised if she recovered from the car accident that she would enter the convent. Nice motivation, huh?
Hmm.
Anyway, anyway,
Wow.
you want to talk any more about that, or should we go on to I wanted to dance with my father?
Let's move into the next one. And I also wanted to say hello to Dee Dee, who just said hello to us. Thank you so much for your participation in our show. Uh, so I'm glad you're enjoying us with Jan Ball here today. We're talking about her poetry, and let's hear from your next poem.
I'm going to read I wanted to dance with my father. Okay.
Okay.
This one I did practice, not the first one. So please
Mm-hmm.
excuse me if the first one wasn't quite up to.
Quite all right. It was great. I enjoyed it. It was
Oh,
interesting.
thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. I wanted to dance with my father. I wanted to dance with my father, to glide around the floor, to my in my patent leather shoes, with my blue skirt and crinolines whirling like sails as my dad maneuvered me between the other smiling Polish couples at the wedding, like a captain propelling a ship through a sparkling sea. intimately sensitive to every landmark. The hall still smelling briny of sauerkraut and roast beef, swirling beside the perfumed bride and groom. Daddy would hold me tight against his gray suit, lit his left hand firmly on my back, the way I'd seen him dance before. Right arm extended, hand holding hand, my young face inches from the knot on his tie and white shirt. Leg against leg, feeling the beat of the music, dizzy with excitement, getting it right. I wanted to dance with my father before the other women came, leaning against his shoulder, laughing, pressing their distorted faces against his face. I wanted to dance before the whiskey bottle made another round of our table and Daddy's eyes began to shine like seagulls lusting after fish, and his cheeks flushed like he'd been standing on the deck of a ship, and he shouted out incomprehensible Polish words that sounded like Yashimasha. He would soon take off his tie and jacket. Reveal stains would come under his arms, and he would smell like vegetable soup. I wanted to dance with my father, not sit on a chair next to my mother at the empty table where my Coca-Cola glass left rings of water on the white tablecloth. What do you think?
It's very sensuous. It has a lot of food imagery and like smells and motion going on in there. It's interesting, and I love the way you captivate so much culturally in there too. It's the imagery of Polish and and then you get into the ship and the metaphor there, and it was very interesting. I love the very personal use of metaphor there in that poem.
Yeah, well, that's an example of how personal much of my poetry is. The I have one of my very best friends from high school says that I have a vivid memory,
Mm-hmm.
maybe more so than most people. I was just born with it, and I can't remember everything now that I'm aging. But in terms of the details, as you say, the food, the Polish sausage, the
Mm-hmm.
sauerkraut. Again,
Right.
I don't want to say it's negative that any of that Polish culture,
Right.
but it was it fitted the idea, and
Mm-hmm. Quite interesting.
one of the men, a friar actually in the Poets Club of Chicago, did refer to the some of the imagery that's a bit intimate.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I haven't explored that, but maybe I don't want
Hmm.
to explore it. I don't know.
Quite possibly. I mean, sometimes you touch things on poetry that are uncomfortable truths, and to a degree you want to stand back from them. That's something I find, at least in my writing, and sometimes I see it in other people, is things that you're writing about are actually somewhat close to you and somewhat distant at the same time. And so there's a way that those emotions can be projected powerfully into the poem without you actually being injured psychically or somehow emotionally by confronting that reality. Do you think that's true?
Yes, a man who understands. Another factor, another factor that I read recently in a book about memory
Mm-hmm.
um, is that some of the everything that we remember isn't accurate either, and that every time
Mm-hmm.
supposedly every time we remember something, we alter it some way in our brain.
Right.
So even though I think I'm being true to that memory, there may be things that I've altered. And why not? I mean, that's what we can do as poets.
Hmm.
We can decide how we want to alter the reality, and that's okay. We can do it. Having come from a sort of an academic background. At least I wrote a dissertation. um, I took a poem to Poets Club one time, and I said, "Don't I have to give credit to the people who I refer to in this poem?" And the poet said, You're, as a poet, you can do whatever you want to do. So that interested me. I'm not sure I agree with
Hmm.
that, but
That is an interesting, I guess you could call it an aesthetic approach, you know? Thanks to Richard and Dee Dee, who have said they loved your poems, and Richard said, keep writing. So that's excellent. You were getting some commentary back. I'm glad you guys are watching. So back to Jan. What did your experiences as teaching ESL, did that incorporate into your poetry at all, or did your understanding of language enhance through uh, teaching a second language, English a second language?
yes, I think that my training in learning how you process English has helped me with my own writing. But in terms of culturally, it's been a marvelous experience for me. And can I talk about it a little bit? That
Yeah,
part?
sure. Go ahead.
Thanks. I got into it. Well, I was teaching in the inner city of Chicago, Spanish speaking students primarily, but I didn't understand anything about second language acquisition then. I just was sent to a school and told to teach after I left the convent. Um, but when I was in Australia, um, they pulled my file because I had studied a little bit of Spanish. Please, please, no Spanish. I'm bad at it. I mean, I know how you learn a language, but I
Un
can't do it very
poco.
well myself.
Un poco is what,
but
my family told me to say.
but when I started teaching in Australia, refugees, Vietnamese refugees, and a few Cambodian students. So that was before I did my graduate work in second language acquisition, and I really really enjoyed it. It was very challenging. I wish I understood more about what these people were going through adapting to a new culture. But on the other hand, now I've never thought of this. I was adjusting to a new culture too,
Hmm.
because Australia is not the United States. And
Right.
so maybe I was able to contribute in that way. And I had been trained as an elementary school teacher. So one of the things I learned was how to teach reading and writing from a very elementary level. So I was able to adapt that to the students I worked with. At the end of my career, when I was teaching at DePaul University in Chicago, I worked with adults and or teenage, mainly adolescents who were
Hmm.
similar to what you might do in the United States, take a year abroad studying. And I really, really enjoyed that also. And I primarily taught writing. So the poetry came in there because the people who I was going to say my superiors, boy, am I brainwashed. The, the people in charge at DePaul
Hmm.
knew that I had a background in poetry writing, so I started teaching writing generally, and I enjoyed that very much. And I think, and there was a little bit of interchange. I did write a few specific poems. I wrote a poem I like very much. I think it's at the end of I Wanted to Dance with My Father, that was about one of a veiled student. Oh, could I read it?
Sure, go
We
ahead.
have. Oh,
I
you
think we
can.
can. I think we can fit it in.
Okay. Veiled student. When I first see her in my classroom, I recoil slightly, as I did last week when I saw the amputated leg man on the bus, his trousers rolled up on one side as if he were going fishing, not protecting his pants from a snowdrift. And now I call the roll Juan Medilla, Seung Kim, Latifa Al-Kabi, and the veiled woman responds in a clear voice as the other unveiled students have. Here, from Saudi Arabia, I like to swim. The next day, I give a vocabulary exercise to which I ask the students to emote the word shock. Pithit contorts her mouth into an O, like blowing bubbles, and widens his eyes. Nacheli inhales, then grimaces like she has eaten too many chilies. What will Latifa do? I ponder. She raises her eyebrows like bridges above the green nakib she is wearing today and twists her neck to the side like a painting of Saint Sebastian with arrows piercing his white body that I saw at the Prado last year. In each class, Latifa volunteers answers, though colorful pieces of cloth stretched across her face, outlining the tip of her nose, which I have become aware of. I accommodate her wish to not have a male partner for a peer evaluation of essays. She writes in her journal how much she enjoys her English class, as well as eating pizza in Chicago, but I can't imagine how she can eat with the veil covering her mouth. Last Tuesday, I walk into the ladies' room before class and she is exiting. She backs up, then says, "Would you like to see my face?" And I say, yes. So I didn't expect to read that poem. I didn't prepare it. But
Interesting. It is
thanks.
definitely a very cultural. Go ahead.
Sorry?
Oh, I was commenting that it's a very, cultural experience. That seems like it would be a somewhat uncomfortable at the same time a situation to learn from in the poem that you presented.
I just didn't think I read it very well because I didn't prepare it. It was, I actually taught individual in Rochester, New York. I did individual instruction with a student named Latifa, and I learned so much from her. She was veiled when I worked with her. And by the end of the year or two that I worked with her, we invited her and her husband to brunch at our house. And by that time, she was wearing street clothes. Well, that's from the convent, street clothes. She was wearing.
It doesn't leave you.
Get away from it. But she was a blouse and a skirt, but she just wore a veil and just covered. She let a little bit of her hair show, but not much of it. And
wow.
I learned a lot working with her about Saudi culture.
So Richard Lemereau, thank you for your question. he wants to know, what is your favorite form of poetry?
Free
Free verse.
writing.
He'd also like to know, what did you learn from them from your last poem, the people you were referring to in the last poem?
What?
He, he'd like to know, you mentioned, you're learning from
Okay,
this Saudi Arabian woman that you learned
I'll give
from.
you an example.
Okay.
I was in the staff room with her, and I was trying to improve her culture, and said that some people felt sorry for Saudi women because they had to wear a face veil.
Mm-hmm.
And she got very angry, and she said, "Don't you feel sorry for me? I feel sorry for you. When I'm wearing a face veil, I I can see you, but you can't see me." And I never thought of that. I never thought of it that
Interesting. It
way.
is interesting. It's a very different twist on the way we see things, like hearing from another's perspective.
Yeah.
So, and how we view them and how they view us, it's like,
Yes.
when we like to other people so much, and, going back to the religious intolerance and various things we discussed earlier. So we're wrapping up now. So it was wonderful talking with you, Jan Ball. And if you have a last message you'd like to share with the viewers out there, and I would also like to thank Richard and Dee Dee for viewing. Thank you very much, guys, for participating and speaking on this program. So, Jan, what is your final message for our viewers?
Write in a journal. Just even if you think you can't write very well, just
Mm-hmm.
it does wonders for
Absolutely.
the soul to write in a journal.
Excellent.
I've
That's a great
enjoyed
advice.
this so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I guess we could all be warned to stay out of convents and be
By
very
me,
careful no matter the situation. Just avoid it like the plague. Uh, Thank you so much for joining us today, Jan. This has been the New York Parrot Literary Corner, and I've been Dustin Pickering, and still am Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host. You'll never know where we'll be tomorrow. Remember, you can donate at paypal.me/nyparrot.com. Or paypal.me/nyparrot. Forget the .com. I'm an idiot. So thank you very much, Jan Ball, for participating and giving us some insight into different cultures, into the convent, into your poetry. It's been wonderful, pleasant speaking with you. So, and then Richard, thank you again for speaking on the program. It is very interesting how we can learn from different people and their perspective, and how we always want to improve someone else. Take Afghanistan, for instance. This is a perfect example of us trying to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed. So thank you very much, Richard, and thank you, Dee Dee, again. And this is Dustin Pickering, and this has been the New York Parrot Literary Corner. You never know where we'll be tomorrow, so keep in touch and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Watch us on Facebook Live. Thank you, guys, all. Thank you for participating, and have an excellent afternoon.